100 days in the medieval era, governed by a golden knight whose only aim is to inflict suffering on all around him, in a world filled with mystery of past times and adventure for heroes to come. This is my journey of surviving 100 days in the medieval era with 3 goals. Find the nameless guardian that holds the secrets to my survival, find the ancient guru that will lead me to the dragon forges of old, governed by the 3 most powerful dragons of all time, and finally, face the golden knight that rules the land. Hundreds of hours of custom builds and custom bosses have gone into this map. Can I survive? Let's find out. Can you subscribe and like the video? That would be a PogChamp thing to do. 20,000 likes and we'll do a part 2 in this world. Let's begin. As I woke up, I found myself in a dungeon. I had spawned into the world a prisoner. I heard a loud cheering outside and then was teleported immediately. This was a cruel fate and may end the 100 days right away. As I glanced up, I saw him for the first time, the Golden Knight. I then was alarmed to see a heavily cladded medieval knight running straight at me. With shield and sword, the battle began. He lunged at me, and I used my shield and space to keep my distance. I swung back, and the fight raged on. However, I killed the soldier and left his corpse on the field. I then was teleported back into my cell. I knew if these fights continued, I would eventually die. So I plotted my escape. I dug my way out through the floor and I ran. This was the start of 100 days of the medieval era. As I ran for my freedom, I was immediately chased by soldiers. This was a warm welcome to what I knew would be a difficult 100 days. I sprinted away, looking for any hope of survival. I noticed a cyclops, which tried to smack me, and I quickly ran, almost falling into a giant hole that led into a deep cavern. The giant continued to chase me, and I continued to run towards a purple forest. After I lost the giant, I noticed a small trading station. I went inside to see if I could hijack any of his food, as it was displayed in crates. Alas, it was not removable. I decided to let the livestock go since I'm a good citizen. I then visited an abandoned city and investigated it to see if any ancient treasures lay inside. After almost being blown up by a creeper, I had made my way out of the abandoned village. I noticed some hay bales on my way out and decided to borrow them permanently for my own use. Whilst raiding a chest nearby, I noticed a helmet called the Phantom Helmet. With the many bosses I had, I knew I would need some sort of custom armor to face them. However, while in the chest, another creeper blew up and brought me to 1.5 hearts. With no food, I was in trouble. I quickly put the helmet on and then crafted some bread to heal up. After leaving another house, I was attacked by a cockatrice. I knew it would demolish me, so I sprinted away. This world definitely had a way of welcoming newcomers. Whilst adventuring nearby, I found a graveyard near the village and decided to dig into the tombs to see if they had left any of their belongings behind. Well, this is perfectly fine, I thought to myself. I began traveling through the night, and I found a small villa in the desert, and I went inside to borrow some more things. As morning broke, I borrowed some armor and set out on my new adventure. However, as soon as I left the house, a death worm was waiting for me right outside the villa, so I sprinted away. I found a temple in the dunes and went inside to investigate it. I found some crossbows and some other items inside of the chests. I had never seen these types of crossbows before. This was a new custom type. I took all that I needed, and a little bit more, and began pillaring back up to the surface. I attempted to set off the TNT by throwing blocks back down, but that did not work. It was time now to begin my quest. The thought of tackling the giant empire the Golden Knight ruled was not one I wanted to think too much on. I had heard rumors of an ancient armor set that was guarded by the 3 most powerful dragons of all time. I knew this would be a task I would need to investigate before challenging the Golden Knight. Whilst investigating a tower later that day, I found some chests at the very top, and a new armor set inside some sort of wardrobe-like object. I looted the chests and replaced my old armor from the new armor in the wardrobe. However, I found myself surrounded by pillagers shortly thereafter. I began fighting away the pillagers that tried to climb up at me. They were trying to kill me this early. I then made a run for it. I found a strange pig, and I made a pit stop to slay it, but it dropped really nothing of interest. I ran until I found another strange-looking village. I went inside to investigate a structure that seemed to have mannequins of an older culture that no longer existed. When I opened the door to one of the houses, I found these strange zombie-like creatures inside, and a lot of them. This world was getting stranger and stranger, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. After sleeping, I looted some of the chests and I continued on my journey. I saw a giant castle in the distance, but I knew I was no match for it, so I stayed my distance. I decided to instead investigate a windmill nearby. Oh, that seems like a nice thing to do, which was empty. I found another one of the villages and decided to join the party. I killed everyone. I then looted all the barrels and chests inside. I knew I would have to settle down soon and begin solving the legends of this medieval world, but I wanted to do a bit more exploring first. I found what seemed to be a small shipwreck, but when I got into the sea, I got wrecked by a sea creature and made my way back to the shoreline. I didn't even get to see what was inside. I found this strange tower-like place that seemed to have belonged to some sort of sorcerer. I went inside and I noticed a secret passageway to a bedroom. I proceeded to rummage through the belongings to see if anything was left behind that was valuable. But aside of some old potions and some cobwebs, there didn't seem to be too much here. While I continued exploring, I saw a very odd creature that seemed to be some sort of legendary horse. I was tempted to smack it to see what it did, but I decided that might be a bad idea. So I killed a pig with a chest on it, again. I made my way into the barn that was a troll was guarding, but I found nothing inside. I then found a dungeon-like structure and decided to plunge into the darkness, but I was attacked by a soldier and barely survived as I was already near death. But I continued down into the dungeon, and in the dungeon, I looted some chests near the top layer. I knew delving too deep would end up killing me, so I decided to stay near the top. I had a long way to go before I could venture to the bottom of one of these dungeons and take on the bosses that rule them. I knew I would need to dive into a brand new custom dungeon at some point in these 100 days, but I wasn't focusing on that now, as I needed to get some of this new gear first. I found a sword in one of the chests and took it for later. I decided to make my way into the mines before setting up a camp to see what this medieval cave had to offer. I found this portal-like substance, but I was interrupted by some skeletons. I had heard tale of an ancient dimension that was crafted using crying obsidian, so I went on a diamond gathering mission to see if I could gather enough to make a pickaxe so I could begin mining the crying obsidian. These caves seemed like they had been drowned by time and water, and maneuvering them was really hard. I knew a lot of dangers lurked in the shadows, so I made sure to only get what I needed so I could get out of here as soon as possible. I began gathering all the obsidian I'd need for these weird deposits. I also gathered some of this strange liquid to see what it was. I crafted the portal only to realize I needed a special igniter to use it. But there was a problem. The igniter was only found in castle strongholds. This would be really tough, but I wanted to see what was in this dimension, so I ventured to a small castle nearby to begin taking it on. I was attacked by mythical creatures that seemed to only want to kill me. These must have been minions of the Golden Knight. I continued my assault on the castle, finding their strongest knight. I defeated him in a desperate battle. I then found an even heavier armored knight that had arrows bounce off of him when I shot him with my crossbows. I used PvP tactics to keep my distance until another soldier came to help him. I was able to kill them both, and I stole his chest piece. It was now time to find the igniter. I found the igniter in one of the 4 chests inside of the castle. I began to loot the other chests before heading back to my portal. I then arrived back at the portal as the elephant's trunk announced me. It was almost like it was warning me not to go in. I wish I had listened. A creature immediately greeted me by attempting to bring me the gift of death, but I fought it away. Everything shot at me from every single corner. This was a horrible place. I left. Like, I don't know who would want to live here. I found a large tower that was erected really high into the air. Most likely some sort of watchtower for a mystical being under the control of the Golden Knight. I made my way in and began killing the minions of this dark world, destroying their spawn camps as I went. I slowly made my way up and looting the chests as I went. The loot was getting rarer and rarer, and the items were thought to be only of myth inside of this world. This made me think, if these existed, then perhaps the ancient armors guarded by the trio of the most powerful guardians in the realm actually existed. But I would have to wait and see. When I topped the tower, the Gollum yeeted itself off, and I just looted the chest. I don't know. The next day, I found myself looking for a place to call home. I found an old mine shaft that was on fire, and then I thought to myself, probably not a great place for a house, but I decided to go and investigate it and see what was down there. This world was full of mystery. I began traveling down the long, dark hallways to see what treasure was left behind. But I met even more of the knight's minions. I used my crossbow to keep them at bay. Whilst adventuring, I found some royal guards deep in the mineshaft. This was odd because the royal guards strictly guarded the palace and the Golden Knight. What brought them hundreds of feet below the surface? It would be a question I'd need to answer later. I then found a suitable spot to begin living, so I began by tearing down some trees for building material and clearing the brush nearby. I chose this spot because I programmed the Modpack so that the royal guard would track me down and try to kill me. This spot was wide open, so I could see them coming, and it had a river to my back in case I needed a quick escape. I knew the royal guard would come for me soon, so I had to get a house up quickly. I was attacked by bees, if not enough stuff hated me in this world already. I used the water to clear out some of the plants away so I could begin the construction of my new house. Whilst building, a raccoon then stole something out of my chest and darted for the water. I chased it down and I killed it. I had no idea what it had taken and it was lost forever. And then, out of nowhere, I was attacked by a medieval scout. This meant that the guard was near. I had to prepare or keep running. And I was tired of running. I took down the small castle beside me so that when the royal guard got here, they would have no reinforcements. I took out all the guards on the ground level and then made my way up, killing all the guards around the top and the archers one by one. I killed the final few men, then felt a certain calm knowing I was more secure in my area. I then went to sleep. The next morning, I was collecting wood when I was attacked by a heavy armored knight. The guard was closing in, and I was running out of time. They would be here soon. I fought the guard using my speed to avoid his heavy-hitting attacks. I continued harvesting wood to make the house. As nightfall came, I began my construction. I used the spruce logs for pillars, and after designing the frame, began filling it in with spruce logs. I picked a design for the sides and built the entire frame of the house. I then accented it with birch stairs all the way around. I collected some sand from the river nearby, as I would need glass panes for the windows. I then put a roof on the house. However, I noticed more scouts nearby and went out to kill them. They were showing up more frequently now. This meant that the guard would be here any day now, and I had to be ready. With the house nearly complete, I put my bed inside. I mined out the floor so I could replace it with a real floor. I then began a mine shaft to collect an assortment of stones to populate the floor with. I wanted to go with a more textured design, something a little bit funky. I wasn't sure if I liked it, but then I remembered I'm currently just trying to survive, so I didn't care much about it. I decided to go mining and collect some more resources. I would need a lot of iron for an idea I had. I dug my mine shaft deeper and deeper. I found an old abandoned chest in the caves below, and a strange ice-like dungeon. Inside, I found skeletons that had remnants of clothes left on them. I took them out and broke their spawner. I found no chest in the room, so I broke the pots and made my way out. I found a massive lava lake that seemed to be home to something. Before I could investigate, I was attacked by an army of skeleton on skeletal horses, so I made my escape. Even the zombies were armored now. As I emerged back up to the surface, I saw a fire. They were here. I sprinted up and attacked the closest guard. With my house ablaze, I was ready to fight for everything. But I was then blinded by something, and I backed up. I couldn't see a foot in front of myself. Something invisible was after me. I swung sporadically, and eventually, I got it. I barricaded myself in with cobblestone. Something had fought off the guards, or scared them off, but I wasn't sure what it was. More invisible creatures were after me, and I swung in the air trying to hit them. After a while, the remaining guards had fled, and I was left in silence. I found one guard remaining, and I reloaded my bows, and I charged in. He kept his shield up, so I used my axe to bring it down. But before I could do that, another minion sprinted out at me. I then took him down, but he almost killed me in the fight. The next day, I ventured out to gather some more supplies to rebuild my house. I knew I'd have to figure out some way to stop these invaders before it was too late. I knew at the bottom of the dungeons I had seen lay a boss that held secrets to my defense. I'd have to venture all the way down to the final stages of the dungeon before too long to gather these ancient defenses. But before that, I wanted to fix my burned down house. I began the rebuilding process of the house using the supplies collected, and when I had completed it, I began crafting the gear I'd need to take on the dungeon and boss below my feet. After getting prepared, I ventured out, and then I found it, the entrance to the dungeon. A scout tried to stop me from entering, but I killed him. I then began my search for the Underlord boss that kept the secrets that would protect my base from an imminent attack. I found the undead in the dungeon and a strange passageway to hidden rooms containing even more loot and more undead. Finally, I reached the base of the ancient dungeon. After escaping to save myself, I found myself hunted by a tall figure with an orange sword. I then killed him and moved back into the dungeon, slaying mobs as I went. I was looking for the boss that ruled this ancient tomb of darkness. I was looking for the Nameless One. I used the crossbow to my advantage, clearing out clusters of mobs as I went. And then I found it. The ancient tomb of the Nameless One. After looking around a little and looking at a pottery vase, I found the main room. It was awoken. The Nameless One shot back and all of a sudden filled the cave with mobs. It could raise the dead with its abilities. With more evil than I cared to count, I began running and shooting. He was summoning the undead like no other creature I had ever seen. Countless mobs poured in, and it got harder and harder. Shot after shot, swing after swing. I was slowly bringing him down, but it was getting way harder. After bringing him down, I faced a bigger problem though. A lot of mobs still remained, and I needed his drops. Like a pog champ, I plunged myself off the ledge and ran perfectly to his loot, grabbing it and making my escape. I then staircased back to the surface. On my way back home, I found an invisible creature that was stalking me, and I killed it. Why was I being hunted? I arrived back home and I slept. I then looked at the drops from the Nameless One. A cape, a helmet, and some sort of stick. I right-clicked the stick on the ground and found it spawned minions. This was the defense I'd need in case a large army came to my base. I knew this alone would not be enough though. I'd need a wall and more arrows in case I was chased. So I ventured out looking for more supplies. I found another mage's house and I looted the secret room. I found an abandoned structure and found a strange pearl. It led somewhere when I right-clicked it, but I decided to save that for later. I then arrived back home and began gathering more stone to build a wall around the house to give my many crossbows an advantage for when the guards arrived again. I laid out a foundation for the wall using stone and began the construction, but I ran out of stone before finishing. I placed some torches outside and then went to sleep. However, I was too restless. It wouldn't let me sleep. This meant the guard was coming. I prepped my bows and scouted, but I saw no one. And then they came. More number and fiercer. When inside, they began breaking down my walls and doors. This was a new type of attack. They made it in, but I used my minions to slow them down. I ran outside and I saw a giant man. He must have been their leader. The Golden Knight really wanted me dead for some reason. I then spawned more of my minions down, and I drew the raiding party back to my original camp of minions, and used my crossbow from a distance. I killed them all. But the leader was still left. I reloaded and headed back to face him. I shot him, and he charged. Shot after shot after shot I unloaded, and I killed him. I delved into the mines to collect even more stone to bring up my walls. However, whilst in the mines, I heard a strange roar outside. I came up, I was attacked by a minion immediately, and then I saw it was raining, and it just felt like a bad omen. As I looked around, I saw nothing, but I brought my bows out just in case. And then I saw it, the Golden Knight's dragon. He had sent it to kill me. I fired my crossbows, but I knew from this range they were useless. I continued to keep on a swivel, looking for the dragon to appear. It kept fading back into the dark clouds. It was trying to surprise me and catch me off guard. One big blow and it would surely kill me. And then it landed behind me. Startled, I shot and ran into the mineshaft with one heart. I shot my arrows at the entrance frantically to negate a possible lightning strike inside. The dragon began tearing apart my home whilst I hid, and the surrounding area. This was a clear message from the knight. I was nothing, and he had everything. My quest to defeat him began now. After re-emerging from the mines, I saw the destruction that was placed. I would not let this go. I ran to my chests and grabbed some supplies. That dragon I would bring down. The Golden Knight would learn to fear me. I knew I would need to find the guru to find out how to destroy this dragon, as I wasn't nearly powerful enough. He resided somewhere in the snowy mountains, so I began my journey to find him. Whilst journeying, I picked up some food from farms as I went by. I found a strange block covered by a canopy, and I clicked on it. It showed what were called bounties. Across the land, you could fulfill these bounties for rewards. I knew my name would soon appear on them. If I defeated the dragon, every soldier in the land would be after me. I went and found an underground room in a hobbit hole and found something inside. There was only some basic loot, nothing too crazy. I was getting closer and closer to the guru. It was only a matter of time now before I unlocked the secrets to defeating the ancient beast. As night fell, I made it to the snowy mountains. I was close. I noticed a strange beast in the distance, but thought it best to leave it alone and allow it to slumber. And then I found it. The Temple of the Ancient Guru.
Ah, another traveler. Come to seek the Dragon Forge, have you? Well, if you seek this knowledge and really want it, go get me the relic from the ancient frost monster. Only then shall I tell you. Go on now.
Shivers were sent down my spine, not only by the cold, but by the fear of what I knew I had to do. I ventured back into the icy terrain, looking for the ancient snow monster. I knew he'd be a tough foe, but I had no other choice. I shot an arrow at him to bounce off, but it did wake him up. He roared, and the battle began. I backed up using my arrows, but he kept freezing me with some sort of dark magic. He got close a few times and did a ton of damage. Eventually, I backed him to a large body of water, but this only made the fight harder as he just basically went swimming. After a while, though, I took him down and returned to the guru with the ancient relic.
A traveler who actually returned. This is the first since the gold. Well done, traveler. Now, the knowledge you seek is hidden behind the most ancient dragon of all time. Go slay the Ender Dragon, and you will find what you seek. But be wary, traveler. Where you look for things, secrets tend to show up.
I then ventured into the mines to gather some obsidian. Now that I had heard that I had to go to the end, I knew I'd need to visit the Underworld first. I found a large open area in the mines and began gathering obsidian from it. After gathering the blocks, I constructed the portal. I then delved in to find the nether looking quite strange, with tons of new blocks and random beacon-like structures. This Underworld was alive with the dead. I found a jungle temple that looked like a jungle temple but was definitely not a jungle temple. It was made out of nether brick. I went inside to see what loot it may hold and found some more food. Whilst adventuring, I found some sort of bone dog. I killed it as it tried to attack me. I explored the Underworld for a bit, finding weird structures here and there. I accidentally hit a pigman. This would cause the entire Underworld to hunt me down now. I looted the chest and began searching for the fortress, as I'd need blaze rods to continue my journeys. I found a fortress and a blaze spawner thereafter. I used my crossbow to kill the blazes from a distance, so I didn't get caught on fire every other second. After a while, I gathered all the rods I needed, and I ventured out. I began traveling back to my home when I found a large enemy outpost, and, in the corner, a strange structure made of blocks I hadn't seen before. When I went inside, it seemed to be filled with little dwarves. I didn't recognize the blocks. They seemed to have some sort of trading system and inscription on the blocks, but I couldn't figure out what they wanted. I then found a small outpost while adventuring filled with venomous spiders. After destroying their nest, I looted the chest they guarded, and I found an ancient helmet and moved on. As I ran through the tall grass fields, I could smell the pollen in the air, and it reminded me of better times. I was nearing the end of this journey and the beginning of the one that may end me. It was now time to face the Ender Dragon, but this was nothing but a first step into the mysteries of this world. He would fall like all the other enemies and provide me with a step to the next goal. The ancient dragon Forges. I made my way out to find some ender pearls. I then realized I had some at home, so I ventured back and began the journey to find the portal. I knew this dragon was a custom one. There was no time to waste. Whilst I journeyed, I found a small outpost. I attacked it in hopes to find some more food before attacking the dragon. I climbed the ladder and found a chest atop the windmill. And then I found it. The ancient stronghold of the Ender Dragon. I dug straight down, ready to begin my search for the dungeon and the portal. When inside, I realized this was custom, not nearly like normal. I ventured around to see what this stronghold had to offer. If the stronghold was revised and even stronger, what was the dragon going to be? I thought to myself. I found a room with some barrels and looted some of the food inside. I continued venturing to the stronghold till I found this long hallway. I went down and found a spawner with a chest. I continued down and I found the portal, suspended by 4 mighty chains from the rooftop. This was my way into the ancient dragon's realm. I destroyed the silverfish spawner and realized I needed more ender pearls. I went around the stronghold and found the remaining pearls I would need. And then I plunged in. It was beautiful. The sky was lit by purple shades. I then remembered I was there for a purpose. To kill the old titan of the game so I could move on to the real foe. I began by destroying all the crystals and kept the ancient beast alive. Whilst nearing the final crystal, he kept hitting me off, but eventually, I got them all. I used my sword when he perked to do damage. I had a few close calls, but in the end, a crossbow shot ended it all. I collected the experience points and traveled back to the portal. Upon returning to the overworld, I found my sword had been supercharged. Killing the Ender Dragon with it had changed into a new powerful weapon. It was now time to seek out the dragon or the Golden Knight's pet and send a message to the kingdom as a whole that I meant business. Before venturing out, I repaired my house again. I started by clearing out the debris from the dragon's breath. I then decided to enchant before continuing, as I wanted a good tools before collecting even more resources to repair my house for the nth time. I searched many buildings and found camps, but no bookshelves were found. I then remembered the stronghold and ventured back to it. I used my axe at first, but then I remembered I had a silk-tucked pickaxe, so I used that instead. After gathering over 20 bookshelves, I began adventuring back to my home. An enchant table would be required as the dungeons and bosses I had yet to face would not go down easy, if at all. When I arrived home, I set up an area and enchanted some tools. I kept getting bad enchants, to the point where I got Fortune 3 on an axe. Who asked for this? Eventually, I got my efficiency and began tearing down the wildlife to rebuild my home. Rebuilding the house was a tedious process, but I wouldn't lose hope. I saw a crocodile and thought to myself, I'm sure he'll stay in the water. Nothing ever bad happens with crocodiles. I returned to the home and began rebuilding it. I knew it would be slightly different, but the blocks that were left set a nice frame to build off of. In a matter of days, I was finishing off the roof, ready to fight another day. I placed my doors down, and it was complete. I then began working on my wall, adding a platform level and a roof to avoid arrows hailing from above. I knew this next raid was not going to be easy. Now, it was time to begin my journey. A creeper almost blew up my brand new house as I walked out. This was already a bad omen. To slay the beast, I needed one more thing. Ice dragon armor that negated its blows. So I began my quest to find an ancient ice dragon to slay. I began adventuring out and I found a tent with some llamas. I looted the chest and said hello to the llamas. They yelled back at me. We were basically best friends. I then found it, a giant structure which was guarded by one of these mythical beasts. I noticed its wing hanging from the roof. Began making my way up to fixxit. I used my crossbow to bug it, but to no avail. So I pillared up, and I got close, and began shooting it. Arrows flew, I used my sword, backed off, and more arrows. Sword, arrows, run. The combination of any dragon slayer. Eventually, it fell to my blade. I now had no excuse. It was time to face the peril I had held off for so long. The dragon that ruined my house 3 times and inflicted terror on the land. The Golden Knight's dragon. I arrived home, made a full set of armor with new scales from the ice dragon and enchanted it. I somehow got an enchant with bees on it. I guess you could say I was buzzing with excitement. I ventured down into the dungeon near the house to collect some golden apples before venturing out. After taking out the mobs, I collected the apples I needed. I made my way into the dragon's lair, killing any creature in my path. And then he emerged, roaring at my presence and trying to assert his dominance. He would fly up, then disappear behind the ancient city's walls. I fired off crossbow shots, but none of them landed. And then he finally landed, and a great roar he emerged. He then began breathing lightning at me, and I backed up to the bridge, firing crossbow shots at him as he roared. I rushed in and began swinging frantically, and then he fell off the edge to his death. When I arrived home, I found myself surrounded by Royal Guard and the Golden Knight himself. Without proper gear, I knew I'd be no match, but I still wanted to try. I ran on the bastilles and tried to take him down, but his Royal Guard kept shooting me, and their combined strength was just too much. I circled back around, using the lake to get a vantage point on the knight. I rushed back in, crossbow blazing. I confronted him, but to no avail, as his soldiers rushed in quickly after. I then left. I would need the ancient armor of the Dragon Keepers to defeat this boss. I began my adventure to find the 2nd and 3rd relics that would be required as sacrifices so the dragons wouldn't kill me. The first was found in the place of old, guarded by the most epic monster of all proportions, the Gollum. After finding the palace, I began venturing up. Pillagers, skeletons, and more tried to stop me, shooting rockets that blinded me and clumping up to wall me off from going up the stairs. I made my way to the top floor and began running through more enemies. And then I found him, the Gollum of the White Tower. The battle began, but he was very strong. He kept spawning in these minions things, and he made himself almost unkillable. So I had to use a strategy. I knocked him off the edge of the castle. I then realized that even on the ground, it was no match. His minions were just too much. I needed to get him immobilized. So I got into the ocean and then ran back, and I started searching for some arrows. I found a nearby castle. I killed the guards, and I looted the arrows inside. I made my way back to the ocean and unleashed heck on the Gollum. After more shots than I cared to count, I brought him down. 1 to go, I thought to myself. I had now had to find the palace of the Lich King. After finding the palace, I waited till nightfall for the Lich Knight to spawn, as they dropped the keys to this dark palace. When night came, he appeared and the battle started. His minions were no match for me. After a brief battle, I killed him. Taking his key, I began making my way inside. I brute forced my way through all the evil mobs inside. Eventually, I found myself in the last room, and, inside of the final chest, the Lich Staff. It was now time. I began venturing to find the ancient dragon forge of old. Once I found it, I cautiously approached. I put the items required into the chest, and all of a sudden, the dragons began breathing into the forges, except for one. Finally, after some time, they all stopped. The purple dragon that was at the head of them all woke up and began casting lightning into the main forge. And then I was permitted to walk up the steps after taking off my armor. There it was, the chest with the final armor I'd need to face the Golden Knight. I removed the armor for the chest and headed off to find the Golden Knight. There he was. As I walked through the palace, I could only think to myself, the last time I was here I was but a prisoner, and now I have come to reclaim the kingdom. Thank you guys so much for watching. There's a brand new channel that my friend's going to be coming out with 100 days videos, perhaps some co-op ones as well. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm going to have their channel linked in the description and in the end card of this video. Also, here's another cool video that I suggest you go and watch. I'm pointing to it. You can't see me pointing to it, but you should really go and watch it.